Greetings all, and welcome to my tale of how I beat a Nuzlocke challenge of Pokemon Emerald DX version. Or is it Pokemon Emerald version DX? I can't recall. Either way, this is a ROM hack of Pokemon Emerald, which updates it and gives it a few new features from later gens, including the physical special split, and that's the main big one and the only one I really cared about. Also, there's a day and night cycle, so that changes too. Anyway, without further delay, let's begin. For those of you who don't know what a Nuzlocke challenge is, it's essentially a run of a Pokemon game where you can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter on a route. But aside from that, and if a Pokemon faints, it is gone forever. So yeah, so those are standard Nuzlocke rules. So I also implemented that field encounters, eggs received, and gift Pokemon count as the encounter of whatever location they're obtained in. So, example, if I were to get an egg in, let's say, Lava Ridge Town, which I do in this playthrough, then that would count as my encounter for Lava Ridge Town, etc. Gift Pokemon, such as like fossils and stuff, those also count as my encounter for the area. That's why what I do with my Pokemon I collected in Rustboro City. So without further delay, there's a few more things I need to mention. The species clause was active during this challenge, so if I had already caught a Pokemon of that species as my first encounter on a route, then I can mulligan, I can encounter another Pokemon, and that will count as my first encounter. This does not account for evolved Pokemon of the species that I already have. So, for example, if I already had a Tentacool, if I were to encounter a Tentacool in the wild, that would still count as my first encounter. So that's what I did. For my level capping, I went with my team could be no higher than the highest level Pokemon of whatever gym leader I'm currently facing. So, whatever their ace Pokemon is, like, say for example, Norman's, I believe, is his Slacking, which is level 31. My Pokemon would not be allowed to be higher than level 31 that I take into that battle. And this also applies, I changed it up later down the road for when I get to the Elite Four and the the Pokemon League. I essentially make it 2 or 3 levels lower than, I believe, the champion's highest level Pokemon, so yeah. And then there's one final battle near the end that I have my entire team is 4 levels lower than his highest level. Alright. And that's everything I have to share. So let's begin. So, as we can see here, when I started out, my name was Shauna, because I enjoy the female character more. She's just more, I don't know, better designed in my opinion. It's the ribbon. The ribbon really sells it. Okay. And we can tell by my trainer number, this is what people usually use in Nuzlocke to decide which starter they should take. That was a 7. Now, I don't play by this rule, I just choose whichever starter I like, so I picked Trico because I always pick Trico for Gen 3. I don't know why. It's just the best. I never pick Mudkip because you are not going to have any problem finding a Water-type Pokemon in a Gen 3 game. There is more than enough to choose from. I'll just say that. Alright. So, after the first encounter of the game, I got my Trico, who I named Tropico. I also should mention I did 3 other failed runs of this before. This was my 4th run. I didn't actually lose the runs before this. I just essentially lost my starter Pokemon, and that really crushed my morals and wanted to continue, so I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm done. I'm not going any further. So yeah, the only real reason I didn't lose was because I didn't wipe, but I still wanted to restart anyway. Anyway, we have Tropico here. The reason I brought up my previous runs is because I previously named my Trico Acacia after the tree, but yeah. I should also mention, the first time in my first run, I had a female Trico, which was pretty cool. Yeah. Alright. Then after I beat Brendan, who was essentially the first milestone, the first roadblock in our path, I got the ability to use Pokeballs. So I went back to the first route and caught my first Pokemon, a Rattata. Again, this is a ROM hack, so they implement lots of different new Pokemon that aren't normally included in the game, like Rattata, which you can find in like day and night cycles on the first route. So if I have a Pokemon you wouldn't normally see in Emerald, that's why. Anyway, I named it Charles after Charles Entertainment Cheese. Anyway, moving on along. Then I caught an Oddish on Route 103, which I named Weedish. Then I caught a Hoot Hoot on Route 102, which I named Mume, after the Hololive idol. Mume, I didn't know it at the time, but she would learn Hypnosis, and she would be indispensable in my quest to catch Pokemon. Which, honestly, she really helped me a lot with some of the harder to catch Pokemon. Especially one team member who I took to the end of the game. Which I really appreciate. Mume is the unsung heroine of this Nuzlocke. Alright. Route 10, I believe it's 104. Yeah. Whatever it is, the one that is west of Petalburg. There was a Weedle that put up one hell of a fight to be caught. This Weedle did not want to be caught easily. So I decided I'd need to give him a strong name for fitting of such a strong and wonderful Pokemon who put up such a substantial fight for a friggin' Weedle. This is Magnus the Weedle. With a name like Magnus, you know he doesn't screw around. And quickly, Magnus evolved into a Kakuna because I like to train up all my Pokemon very quickly. In the Petalburg Woods, I caught a Cascoon, which I named Mothix, because I know what it evolves into, for one. For another thing, I was out of interesting moth names to use. I caught a Venonat in my first playthrough, which I named Mothballs, and he lasted quite a while. But, yeah, this isn't... I don't want to associate that Pokemon with this Pokemon, so that's why I changed up the naming scheme. After taking care of the Team Aqua Grunt, who is essentially the next milestone in our battling journey, I caught a Pidgey on whichever route it is that is east of Rustboro, outside the Rustturf Tunnel. The reason I didn't catch a Pokemon after I got out of the Petalburg Woods is because that still counts as Route 104, where I had already caught Magnus. Then I caught a Whismur, who I named Pumbloom, after one of my favorite Game Grumps jokes. I know, this is coming from the person who says Game Grumps isn't that funny, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they're funny as people, and I enjoy them. It's just, their content is not Let's Plays. It's more of a podcast. Putting it lightly. Okay. Then, Mothix evolved into Dustox after me, constantly sending out into battle and then switching it out for something that can fight, because, as we know, if you catch a wild Cocoon Pokemon in the battle, they do not actually know any attacking moves, so it makes it very difficult to train them up. If you see the weird-looking background there, just ignore that, because that is a little glitchy side effect of playing on the emulator, I guess. Some of the backgrounds look like that. Magnus also evolved into Beedrill. And little would I know, he would be carrying me for quite a bit of the game. He wouldn't be super helpful, but God, he would be very helpful to have around in some areas. Especially with all the grass and dark types that I would have to deal with. Alright. So then I finally caved in and went to Roxanne. I used Weedish as my star player here because I knew that her nose pass would try to block me in right away, and then it would try to use Rock Tomb, so I needed to come up with a way to get around that. So I decided, instead of being locked in here with them, I was going to lock it in here with me. So what I did was I used Poison Powder and constantly absorbed on the thing, so she would just waste all of her potions keeping it alive. All in all, Weedish carried me through this battle, and it was a good combo with Poison Powder and Absorb. After that, my Tropico evolved into a Grovyle, which was nice. Then I went and did the optional battle with Brendan outside in Rustboro City, where Charles actually took the final blow there. I'm not sure what happened too much, but I want to say I got lucky against his Torchic because, oh boy, that Torchic. Yeah. it had killed several of my Pokemon in previous attempts at this. Then I went to Dewford Town and caught a Magikarp with the newly transferred Old Rod. And here we have Triton, another Pokemon member who I would take to the end of the game with me. Now, for the one person in the audience who doesn't know, Magikarp is an insanely weak Pokemon, but it evolves into an insanely strong Pokemon if you manage to train it up to a point. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I got one of these. Because once Magikarp evolves into Gyarados, you're pretty much set for the rest of the game. You don't... If you pick any water type, I would suggest going with a Gyarados, because it's a very versatile Pokemon, and very helpful to have. I also decided to go and theme my graveyard boxes. I don't actually release the Pokemon that die, so I instead put them in PC boxes and leave them there until, I don't know, I beat the game, and the Nuzlocke challenge is over. So I have the Heaven box, and the Hell box. Pokemon who do a good job and try their best end up going to Heaven, while the ones who don't contribute much at all go to Hell. Alright, and then I went into the Granite Cave on Dewford Island, and I decided to poke my head down into the lower, darker areas of the cave, where you need Flash to explore. Well, you don't need Flash. In fact, I made it through the cave without using Flash, because it's just that simple to do. And I also caught an Aron in there, which I decided to name the Wall. He was going to be my defensive wall for the later portions of the game, which nothing could get past. Because Aron is a Rock Steel type. Now, despite having a quad weakness to ground and fighting, those are physical based. And Aron is an amazing physical wall. So hopefully he's going to be of a lot of use to us later down the road. I also caught a Tentacool outside using an Old Rod on Route 106 outside of Granite Cave, which I named Jalissa. Why? Because it seems like a Tentacoolish name. Also, I was also making sure to train other reserve Pokemon in the wings here, because I went back after I met Steve and delivered the letter. This was even before Brawly, and I went and got the EXP share, which is modified in this game to work as it does in later games, giving even portions of experience to your entire party. So, with that, combined with my ability to make the emulator run at like 1,000% faster than normal gameplay runs, yeah, it was very easy for me to level up my team quickly. So I evolved Bourbon to Pidgeotto, and then I went and defeated Brawly in Dewford Gym. I would like to mention that his Meditite is very scary, because if you don't constantly attack it, it will use Focus Punch, and it will kill whatever is in front of it. Focus Punch is a move that you wouldn't expect to run into in the second gym of the game, because it can easily one-shot a Pokemon. So yeah, Mothix was big in here because he quad resists fighting and also learned Confusion at this point. So he was a big help for getting past Brawly and the Makuhita, especially that scary Meditite. God, I can't remember how many Pokemon I had lost that thing previously. Then I went and caught an Illumise on the Cycling Road route north of Slateport, which I named Thick Bug. Not because I like it, it's because it's defensive. Those of you who are into Illumise, then no Pokephilia. With that is as far as we're done having this conversation. She is thick because she is defensive and tanky. That is the only reason. I didn't even use her though, so yeah. Mume also evolved into a Noctowl at this point, which is really helpful because, again, she would definitely seriously help me get through the earlier portions of the game, and even in the later portions. Again, she made catching Pokemon so easy with Hypnosis, just putting them all to sleep. Charles Entertainment Cheese also evolved into Raticate, so he would help me eradicate my enemies. Alright. Then I went and dealt with the infamous battle with Brendan on the Cycling Road route, which I barely managed to scrape by with. I want to say the only reason we got past the Combuskin was because I got a critical hit with Mothix's Confusion or something. Or maybe it was even Mume just using Peck, I don't know. Either way, that Combuskin didn't get a kill on me today. So I think we made it to Mauville at this point. Oh! No. We went west of Mauville, and then I caught a Snubbull on the route between Mauville and Verdanturf Town. So I named this Snubbull Underbite. I wasn't going to be using him much at all, but I mean, always good to have a Pokemon, because Snubbull's not a bad Pokemon. Also, Fairy type was implemented into this game, so that's another feature, because it's always good to have a Fairy type Pokemon. Because I'll go ahead and say it. I think the Fairy type is not OP, but more strong than it should be. Anyway, we also evolved Pumbloom into Loudred, Weedish evolved into Gloom, and Triton had evolved into Gyarados. Not going to be very helpful coming up because Watson is an Electric-type gym leader, and Gyarados is quad weak to Electric, so one Electric-type move, and your very difficultly sought-after Gyarados is going to be one-shotted, and it won't feel good. And then, tragedy strikes. Against Watson's Magneton, which refused to go down easily. The wall fainted. It had Sonic Boom and Spark, and I believe it got a, No. It was a crit Shockwave that did it in. I can see now. Yeah, I made sure to make a note of that. The crit Shockwave, which happened to the wall at full health, I might add, did him in. A one-shot kill. And as if that weren't enough, Charles went down against Manectric. Which was a shame because I think Charles was my MVP of... he was my MVP of the battle with Brendan on Cycling Road. So that really hurt me. Either way, Charles went down fighting, and he did a number on that Manectric, leading to the rest of my team to take it out. So finally, after killing two of my Pokemon, Watson fell in defeat. I put Charles and the Wall in heaven, where they belong, for good contributions. The Wall didn't contribute much, but at least he tried. And by God did he do okay. Alright, so then north of Mauville, around, I believe it's the one right outside of the Fiery Path, I caught a Nuzleaf, which I named Bark Boy. Because he's made of bark. Right. Then I caught a Machop in Fiery Path.
And his name is John C.
Yeah, well... Unfortunately, he wasn't going to be too useful coming up. Because Machop is a bit slow, so... I don't know. I already had mine in for other fighting types to hopefully help me along the way. And then, as I went out to the route covered in ash, the one north of the desert, I was super excited, wondering what awesome Pokemon I was going to find. It turned out to be a Spinda, one of the Pokemon I hate the most. I absolutely hate Spinda. They're worthless. They're weak. They don't learn any interesting moves. I don't like it. So, yeah. I don't like Spinda. So I named it Boo! Because that's what he got, a big boo from me. Then I went out to the route west of Fallblor Town. Fallarbor? Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. I went west of that route and caught a male Jigglypuff. There was only one name I could give this person. This wonderful... strong-ass person, getting ready to Yum-Ta all over the place. For those of you who don't get the reference, play Pokemon Time, Explorers of Time, or play Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Time /Darkness/Sky. The Wigglytuff is the best character. Anyway, moving on along. I went and dealt with Maxie on top of Mount Chimney, getting past most of his baddies, and dealing with him. That camera up is pretty scary, but luckily I had Triton knowing some pretty strong moves at this point. By which I mean, he was resistant to fire type and ground type moves had no effect. Unfortunately, he didn't have any actual water type moves. Oh, something I should also mention, which is pretty important for this. TMs are infinite use in this ROM hack, so That's why I was able to have so many good moves on my Pokemon at all times. Anyway, somehow Mume managed to put this Growlithe to sleep on the first turn, which avoided him using Roar, which is very good because he was my first encounter. So I managed to catch this Growlithe, which I named Burn, who would be one of the most helpful Pokemon coming up in my run of this game. And then, tragedy strikes again. I thought it wouldn't matter, but Mothix fainted when that Torkoal just barely managed to get out and overheat. I thought it would survive at least one. I was wrong. Mothix tried his best, but in the end, that Torkoal just wouldn't go down. After defeating Flannery, delivering the final hit with Burn, actually, I put Mothix in heaven, where he belongs. I'd like to also point out that most of the Pokemon who died had been holding that Quick Claw. I feel like that Quick Claw is cursed. Alright, and then I went and caught a Cubone in, where did I catch that? I want to say that was Mirage Tower where I caught it. Anyway, I named her Bonette and transferred her to the PC. Then caught Costa the Cacnea. She was caught in the desert. I transferred her to the PC as well. And then after learning Flame Wheel, I evolved Burn into Arcanine with a Firestone. So now he was going to be tearing some shit up for real. Magby also hatched from the egg, which I received in Lava Ridge Town. I skipped over that part, but I don't care because I'm not going to be using the Magby that much. Though, if I did not catch Burn, Magmar would have been a surefire, no pun intended, shoo-in for my team. So, at this point, I don't know what happened. I guess I thought John Cena would be helpful coming up in the Normal-type gym, but he died to the first enemy. Yeah. Sorry, John Cena, but you're going to hell. You contributed nothing. I also got the Claw Fossil back in the Mirage Tower, which I brought to Rustboro City, and my encounter of Rustboro City was going to be Jonathan the Anorith. Why did I name him Jonathan? Because he looks like a Jonathan to me. Don't you agree? Right, then moving on along, it was time for more tragedy. Oh wait, no it wasn't because we don't care. I had Boo in my team to basically give me more time in case I need to heal up my team. And I decided, you know what? Okay, we're going to sacrifice Boo in order for me to heal up my team better. So that's what I did. Against Norman Slacking, which is infamous for being hard to take down, I went and sacrificed Boo in order to give me some more time to fight against the Slacking, which really paid off in the end because I was able to beat it. Using a very clever combo, because I taught Burn Dig, as you know, and Slacking can only attack every other turn. I had Burn Burrow Underground on the turns that Slacking was going to be able to attack, and had him come up and be vulnerable on the turns when Slacking would do nothing. Yep, so I defeated my dad, and I put Boo in the very bottom of hell, where he belongs. You might say I'm being a bit too harsh on Spinda. No, Spinda doesn't get enough hate. Alright, then I went to New Mauville with my newfound Surf HM and caught an Electabuzz. She really put up a good goddamn fight. I really thought I wasn't going to catch her or she was going to kill one of my team members. But no, we managed to scrape by just fine. And I caught her, named her Electra after such the adorable little blade from Xenoblade 2. And after that, I caught a Mankey on the route to the east of Mauville, which I named Bonky Kong. I would rename him Bonky Kong later because that just sounds better. And yeah, it sounds funnier too. Anyway, we had Bonky Kong. Then I caught a Poliwag, I believe in, I don't know, at this point I had the Good Rod and Surf, so a lot of water-type Pokemon open up to you in areas where you couldn't fish previously. I think I caught Slippy in Petalburg City, but yeah, let's see. I caught a Krabby somewhere, which I named Money. I caught a Goldeen, which I named Yundine. And then I went to North, and oh my god, I was so freaking lucky because my first encounter was Heracross! Yes, Heracross. Oh my god, I love this Pokemon. A sky-high attack stat with wonderful moves, bug fighting type, learning one of the best bug moves ever implemented in Pokemon. I named her Ashley. Why? Because she looks like an Ashley. Matt and I might have a OC later down the road who is named Ashley, and she happens to have insect-like features, but that's for talking about later. So yeah, Ashley was obviously going to come onto the team sooner or later. Oh boy, and was I happy when she did. Oh, and also, you're given a cast form after you go to the Weather Institute and save it from Team Aqua. So, since I already encountered a Pokemon on this route, I sent it straight to hell. Because also, no one likes cast form. Alright, so then on the Brendan encounter, he praised my skills. I managed to scrape by without any trouble from what I can see. Then I caught a Weeping Bell on the route east of Fortree City, which I named Audrey. I believe... Or was it... I forget what the plant was called from Little Shop of Horrors. It was either Audrey or Audrey 2. But either way, I named this one Audrey after it. And then tragedy struck me. While training against the Suicide Bomber kids, a freaking Suicide Bomber coughing self-destructed and made Jalissa faint. Why did I have Jalissa out? Because I was training her and thought she would be okay. But no, this coughing just happened to come along and blow up. Jalissa didn't end up contributing anything, so I sent her to hell. Then, Slippy evolved into a Poliwhirl. Underbite evolved into Granbull. And then after that, I went and tackled Winona without a single problem. There were probably some close calls here and there, but it doesn't matter. I needed to shut down that Altaria before it started spamming Dragon Dance, so I needed to make sure I did that quickly. And also I needed to make sure I didn't have a Pokemon that was weak to ground because it knew Earthquake, which you really think it wouldn't know. But anyway, that Altaria did not last. Oh, and then on the next route, the Shuppet killed itself by using Curse.
Failure.
So, yeah, no encounter for this route. My first failed encounter. Quickly followed by my second failed encounter.
Failure.
When Jonathan overkilled a Carvana that I caught in Lily Cove City with a good rod. Luckily, though, I managed to go to the abandoned ship and fish in there, and I managed to fish up another Carvana, who I named Nibbles. Were it not for the fact that I already had Triton on my team, I almost certainly would have used Sharpedo in this run. Because it's my favorite Hoenn Pokemon by far. Alright. And then I also caught Sandra the Sandshrew in the Safari Zone. Which, the Safari Zone is a bit of a special case. There's 4 zones in the Safari Zone, so I give myself the first encounter of each zone to catch them. Sandra is the only one that really mattered, which I technically got rid of one encounter because there's an egg that you can get in the Safari Zone in this game by talking to the Heart Gold Soul or Gold Silver protagonist, or the Heart Gold Soul Silver protagonist in what do you call it? In the rest house in one of the corners of in the lower left corner of the Safari Zone. So that was my encounter for the lower left corner, was getting the egg. At this point, Tropico had evolved into Sceptile, so I was getting ready for my next big battle. And then Guildmaster evolved into Wigglytuff. Yum-Ta time. Also, Vulcan evolved into Magmar. Burb evolved into Pidgeot. Nibbles evolved into Sharpedo, which was what I was holding out for because there was a chance of running into Sharpedo coming up on my way to Mount Pyre. So I didn't want to waste my encounter there by running into a Sharpedo. But it didn't matter anyway because... Oh, wait first. Then Totodile hatched from the egg. That's the Pokemon that I got from the Safari Zone. It didn't matter, as I was trying to say, I named him Lil Rule after, you know, King K. Rule because he's a crocodile. Okay, but am I gonna get to that point where it didn't matter? No, because then I had to go and fight Brendan again and kick his ass so I could go to the department store because he blocks you from entering the department store in Lily Cove until you beat him for whatever reason. Okay, and then the well damn thing happened when Twin Needle critted and killed the quillfish that I encountered on the route on the way to Mount Pyre, Route 122.
Failure.
However, inside Mount Pyre, I caught a Dust Skull who I named Callie after Calliope Mori from Hololive. And, oh boy, little did I know that she was going to be saving my ass so hard later. I also caught a Coughing in the Team Magma hideout. Make of that name what you will. I also went back to outside Meteor Falls. I want to point out I haven't used my Meteor Falls encounter yet for a reason. And it was, I believe, Route 125, whichever it is to the west of Meteor Falls. And I caught a Mischievous there, which I named Spookable. And then I went and beat Maxie in his hideout, which was really good because that camera up was a nightmare last time around, because I remember it just having not only magnitude, but also rock slide, so it had means to fight back against Triton. Luckily for me, I was ready this time. I caught an Ursaring on the route south of Route 123, which I named Banjo. And, of course, I didn't get, you know, my encounter for the Team Aqua base, because the only Pokemon you can find in there are some field encounters with an Electrode. And you guys know what Electrodes do, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, I did not manage to catch that Electrode. But Jonathan did evolve into an Armaldo! And that's all I really have to say. I also caught a Swinub in, Shoal Cave, which I named Tusk. Which is unfortunate, because unfortunately you can't evolve Tusk or Swinub into Mamoswine in this version, because I checked, the heart scales do not let you learn Ancient Power, because I caught a Yanma in one of my previous playthroughs. Speaking of one of my previous playthroughs, I caught a female Snorunt one time, which they do sell Dawnstones in the department store, so I actually managed to have a Frostlass for most of the game. That was my first run-through of the Nuzlocke challenge. But then, during an encounter later in the game, right before I reached the Pokemon League, I lost a lot of Pokemon, and I didn't want to continue at that point. So yeah, that's why, unfortunately, I was stuck with Swinub this time. And then, there was the scary-ass Wobbuffet. But it wasn't the scary... Unfortunately, Magnus went and did the Twin Needle against him, and Wobbuffet used counter, but Magnus hung on by the skin of his teeth. He lived against Wobbuffet, a notorious Pokemon killer in Nuzlocke. Yeah, that was pretty lucky for me. I also went and caught somewhere. I forgot where I caught that, but I found it. I also caught a Pelipper, which I named Put Baby in Pelican Mouth, acronym only. Then I beat Tate and Liza on Moss Deep City. I don't think there were any scary moments here because Triton and Tropico did a good combination with each other. Anyway, moving on along, I caught a Clamperl, who I named Aurora, thinking that maybe in case Triton died, I might be glad with Gorbis on my team. Unfortunately, Gorbis is the Deep Sea Tooth and Deep Sea Scale. I have no idea where to find them in this version because the way you normally obtain them in Pokemon Emerald, you get something else for doing that this time around, so yeah. Anyway, I also found a shelter outside of Sidopolis City, which I named Lem II. So, in case I really needed a defensive wall Pokemon, that would be a good Pokemon to fall back on. I also got a Horsey, which I named Mpreg. The reason why I named it that is because, well, look up how seahorses reproduce. You'll understand. I caught a Crawdaunt in the Undersea Cavern, which I named Crobster after, well, a rather infamous boss from Pikmin 2. Then I beat Archie at this undersea cavern, who is significantly easier than Maxie. And at this point, both Groudon and Kyogre are awake and staring each other down in the middle of Setopolis City, with Groudon just sitting on a dinky little rock in the middle of water. So it was my job to go and find somebody to calm them down. In the Cave of Origin, I encountered a Mawile, which I named Baka, because she looks like a tsundere. And well, because Moonmate just decided to throw a crit Shadow Ball at this Claydol, which I had all wrapped up and ready to capture, because it couldn't use self-destruct because it was asleep in the Sky Pillar. Nope! She had to crit Shadow Ball it, and well, there we go.
Failure.
So then I woke up Rayquaza, and he put those two people back to sleep. I also caught a Wailmer, which I named Whale! Yeah. I also caught a Remoraid, which I named Inanis, because I know what it evolves into, and I got a Wingull, which I named Blech, because I really didn't care at this point. Anyway, Inanis evolved into Octillery. Believe me, if Triton were to end up dying, I'd be using Inanis too. Probably after Nibbles, though. I'm not sure which one of them I'd use. Probably Nibbles first, because I don't want to put Ina in that sort of danger. Inanis is obviously named after my Inanis from Hololive. Then I caught a Corphish, which I couldn't name Shrimp because there were enough spaces in between the letters for me to do it, so I just had to call it Shrimp, unfortunately. Then I evolved Callie into Dusclops. Now, Dusclops, you can't evolve it into Dusknoir in this game, but Dusclops on its own is still a really good wall. With that in mind, I wanted to make sure I had a really good special wall coming up, because Juan's Kingdra, which is the final gym leader, that Kingdra is a bitch to take down. Speaking of which, I had a strategy put in place for this one, as we can see here. Now, this Kingdra likes to use Double Team and Rest. You can see how this would get annoying. Luckily, I had Guildmaster at this point, who had Disarming Voice, a Fairy-type move which will never miss, which is perfect for dealing with a Water Dragon type who's being very evasive. I also had Callie learning Toxic to constantly whittle away at its HP, so it would have to constantly put itself to rest. And eventually... Oh, no. I didn't use Toxic. I didn't teach Toxic to Callie yet. I used Curse, because Curse is incurable via rest. So yes, I remember now. Callie withstood the attack from the Kingdra and cast Curse on it. Then I switched into Guildmaster, so as it was constantly resting to heal off the damage from Curse, I could just spam Disarming Voice, which would always hit it no matter how evasive it got. With this strategy, I managed to beat that stupid-ass Kingdra. However, tragedy struck. Crawdaunt and Ashley were locked in a battle. Unfortunately, Ashley had already taken a hit, and Crawdaunt used Crab Hammer. But, no, tragedy actually did not strike. The only person tragedy struck was this Crawdaunt, because Ashley had Endure up. And then I went and used the Endure Reversal strategy, baby. That Crawdaunt went down like, I don't know. Either way, Juan was defeated after a very annoying battle. Well, not very annoying, but substantially annoying. I got rid of that Kingdra easily, and Ashley held out to the very end. On the way to Evergrande City, I caught a Kingler with a Super Rod who I named Bart, which is crab backwards. Then I caught a Golbat inside Victory Road, which I named Matban, because Batman is a name. And then actual tragedy struck. A stupid Medicham who wouldn't stop spamming high jump kick happened to get a lucky hit in and killed our beloved Guildmaster. You bet your ass I made this thing suffer. Guildmaster went straight up to heaven so he could party with Mothix, the Wall, and Charles in peace. And then more tragedy. against a wild Sableye. Maybe it was a crit with Fury Swipes or Nightshade. I don't remember exactly, but Magnus the Mighty Beedrill finally met his end. He also went to heaven. Also, Mlem II evolved into Cloyster because I needed a defensive wall at this point. I don't even think I mentioned the encounter with Wally yet. But yeah, Wally on Victory Road. The encounter there, that was the first encounter on my first playthrough that killed not only my starter, but also another trusted Pokemon. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm resetting this. I don't care. So yeah. And unfortunately, when you think that Mlem II is going to be a great defensive wall, she died to a Roselia while I was training her for... Actually, I can't remember where exactly I was training her, but she had Ice Beam, and I thought it would be enough. Nope, Mlem died in one hit from a Giga Drain, because I got greedy. So I sent Mlem to heaven, Mlem II to heaven, because that was my fault. Oh. Then I actually beat Wally. This was all before... I could have sworn I fought Wally earlier than that. Well, okay. And then... more tragedy in the Cave of Death that was Victory Road. Ashley the Heracross, who had carried me for good times and bad. I set up for another Endure reversal against this Swellow here. Unfortunately, she wasn't as fast as I figured, and Swellow outsped her, delivering a coup de grace when she was at 1 HP. That was my own fault again, and Ashley went to heaven. And then I decided, well, I'm running short of terrestrial Pokemon at this point that I'm willing to use. But then I remembered, oh yeah, I still haven't gotten my encounter for Meteor Falls. And as you guys might know, somewhere in Meteor Falls, there is a chance of a room where you can run into Bagon, who can evolve into Salamence, a friggin' destructive force of a Pokemon to be dealt with. So I went to that room and I encountered a Lunatone. Yeah, I was a little pissed. So I went with Matban instead to fill the missing slots on my team, and he evolved into Crobat pretty quickly after I fed him full of friendship-boosting berries. And then we were ready to go forward and deal with the Elite Four. With Tropico the Sceptile, Burn the Arcanine, Triton the Gyarados, Jonathan the Armaldo, Matban the Crobat, and Callie the Dusclops. Now, for those of you who think that my natures are pretty ideal, I actually was able to customize their natures myself. The reason being is there are items you can buy later in the game that will change your Pokemon's nature, which is perfect for when you want to minimax a certain Pokemon's stats. So I got their ideal natures that I wanted, and with that, I went in for battle. Sydney stood no chance against us. Quickly lost to my Tropico, and, you know, my other Pokemon as well. Then I went and took care of Phoebe. Glacia wasn't that much trouble either. No, it was only the next guy who I was really scared of. Drake, the Dragon Tamer. Who I beat. Yeah, I didn't really pay much attention. There was some scary moments with that Salamence, to be sure, but I still managed to get past it. Teaching Callie Ice Beam was one of my best calls. And then it was time for the final battle against Wallace. Yeah, that's right, it's Wallace in this. Anyway, Wallace's stupid-ass Milotic, which is tanky as hell and just refuses to die. I just used Callie and Toxic stalled it. Callie is a perfect special wall, and yeah. Anytime Wallace uses a full restore, oh, time for Toxic again. Eventually that Milotic went down after suffering a lot. And then, as Wallace was down to his last Pokemon, an outcome that I didn't anticipate. came about. As Gyarados was setting up, spamming Dragon Dance, I quickly sought to shut down its speed. I sent out Jonathan, ready to Rock Tomb it to slow it down a bit. However, by the time I had already sent Jonathan out, it was too late. Gyarados used Earthquake, and with that, Jonathan the Armaldo was gone. Now, at this point, I was very scared, because I didn't know how I was going to be able to deal with this Gyarados. And the answer to my prayer, to fight against this thing, came in a very unlikely form. Matban. I taught Matban Torment, Double Team, and Poison Fang. With this combination, I was able to badly poison the Gyarados, Double Team it to avoid all of its attacks, and Torment it to prevent it from using the same annoying moves over and over again. Matban actually survived against this superpowered Gyarados. With that, Wallace had fallen. And the team that I brought to the Pokemon League was entered into the Hall of Fame. With that, Shauna's journey to become a Pokemon League champion had ended. Of course, as we all know, Pokemon doesn't end as soon as, you finish the game. So, after continuing my adventure, I put Armaldo into heaven, and I sought out to do some more things. Real quick, in this game, if you go back to Professor Birch, you can pick another one of the Hoenn starters. This time around, I chose Torchic, and also, since technically you don't really... you might say, wait a minute, didn't you already get your starter in the form of Tropico? Well, that's the odd thing. Tropico, your starter Pokemon normally, it counts as an encounter for Route 101. Now, normally, you can't catch Pokemon around that time, so I hadn't encountered a Pokemon for Little Root Town, so that's why I chose Torchic as my choice this time. I was able to actually get an encounter for Little Root Town. Now, you might say, okay, that doesn't make any sense because you also caught a Pokemon on Route 101. Well, you can't avoid the starter, so technicality, you know what, it's complicated, I don't care. Besides, it was just a Rattata. I mean, he managed to carry me through that fight with Brendan, but that's about it. I also caught a Beldum, found a Beldum in Moss Deep City, which I named Dumb, because I couldn't use it because I already caught a Pokemon in Moss Deep City, so he went straight to hell. I also caught a Sudowoodo in the Battle Frontier, which I was able to get to now, which I named Fake Wood. And I caught a Smeargle, which I named Azarella, because we can't have male... I don't know, named after my friend Azura, who is... Smeargle is his muse, and normally he's male, so this one's female, because Ella is sort of a prefix, appendix for female. Whatever, I caught a Pokemon. And then, instead of going around to the final battle area, because I knew there would be one, I decided to try to catch every single legendary Pokemon available. Now, I wasn't going to be using them, but I would have to break a few rules for this Nuzlocke challenge, because at this point, you're not allowed to catch any Pokemon you find, and also you're not allowed to use legendaries, but I wanted to catch all the legendaries just for the sake of catching all of them. So, I managed to catch Jirachi first and foremost by returning to the Cave of Origin. Again, I think that's exclusive to this game. Which I put in the banned box. This is where banned Pokemon would go. Then I managed to go back to Sky Tower and find a Rayquaza. Wait, what the fuck? Oh my god! Shiny Claws, we're breaking the rule! Ha! Ha ha! Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Ha ha! I have shiny Rayquaza! That I'm never going to be able to use at all because it's in a banned box, and you know, it's also on an emulator. Doesn't matter, it just felt good for the sake of catching a shiny. Anyway, now moving along. I went and caught Groudon and Kyogre. Triton was the MVP for those. Then I caught Deoxys with the ticket that you get from Captain Stern, who normally gives you the Deep Sea Tooth or Deep Sea Scale. And then I caught those guys. I also managed to catch Lugia and Ho-Oh. Excuse me, it's not Captain Stern who gives you the ticket. You go to Moss Deep Space Center after beating the Pokemon League, and Steven gives you the ticket for Deoxys. Captain Stern gives you the one to go and catch Lugia and Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh, I might add, took me at least 4 attempts because it's always a bitch to catch for me for whatever reason. But yeah, I ended up catching it. Now, again, since I'm catching these Pokemon, it's different from traditional Nuzlocke rules, so I'm not really following Nuzlocke rules in this case. The only rule I really follow is that I'm not allowed to use them after catching them for these legendary Pokemon battles. Alright, then I went to Shoal Cave and caught the Articuno there, because they're all obtainable in this as well, the 3 legendary birds. The Zapdos in New Mauville, and Moltres on Victory Road. And then I went to the Altering Cave, which opens up after you, brain. It opens up after you beat the Pokemon League, and you can fight Pokemon Trainer Leaf there. Essentially the protagonist from Pokemon Leaf Green. Well, one of the possible protagonists. And she was pretty scary. Fortunately, with Bonky Kong, my new 6th team member, replacing Jonathan the Armaldo, he was able to take out that Kangaskhan with a cross chop to the face. I remember her Slowbro in particular being difficult to take down because it just would not stop healing. But yeah, after getting through with Bonky Kong, I caught Mewtwo at the end of Altering Cave. And then I remembered, oh yeah, the Reggies are in this game, so I had to go and catch Relicanth, which I would soon delegate later to Hell, because of how much of a pain in the ass it was for me to catch this thing, or at least to run into it. Evolved well into a Wailord. Then I went and caught the 3 Reggies. Regirock put up quite a bit of a fight. Regice was pretty frail, but I managed to catch it. And Registeel, I got on my first try. I always liked you the best, Registeel, even though you're a friggin' Nazi. And with that, the banned box was full of a bunch of mythical Pokemon that I wouldn't be using. Mewtwo was in the bench box. I forgot to move him over. I did afterwards, though. And then I managed to actually find another wild encounter I had yet to do when I went to the Fossil Maniac's house and went to claim the root fossil. You can encounter wild Pokemon down there. I completely forgot about this. I found a Ditto, which I named Latecomer, because at this point, we're getting to the end of the game. The end of Endgame. Because it is time for the final battle against Steven fucking Stone. And that Credilli took quite a long time, and it got very scary when it crit on Giga Drain, almost murdering Callie. But aside from that, Steven had fallen. And with that, let's take a look at our final team and Pokemon people, guys. Burn the Arcanine. Bonky Kong, the Primeape. Triton, the Gyarados. Tropico, the Sceptile. Callie, the Dusclops. Matban, the Crobat. And not to forget all of our benched Pokemon. Lil Rule, the Totodile. Barkboy, the Nuzleaf. Weedish, the Gloom. Electra, the Electabuzz. Not Bagon, the Lunatone. Thick Bug, the Illumise. Sandra, the Sandrew. Pumbloom, the Loudred. Underbite, the Granbull. Casta, the Cacnea. Put baby in pelican mouth, the Pelipper. I totally forgot what your name was, sorry. Whale! The Whale Lord. Slippy, the Poliwhirl. Money! The Krabby. Goldeen. Undine, the Goldeen, excuse me. Burb, the Pidgeot. Audrey, the Weepin' Bell. Nibbles, the Sharpedo. Bark, the Kingler. Hotwings, the Torchic. COVID-19, the Coughing. Spookable, the Mischievous. Banjo, the Ursaring. I forgot what your name was too, sorry. Hya, the Staryu. Inanis, the Octillery. Aurora, the Clamperl. Latecomer, the Ditto. Empreg, the Horsey. Crobster, the Crawdont. Baka, the Mawile. Vulcan, the Magmar. Mume, the Noctowl. I forgot what I named you to. Shit, I don't think I ever talked about you. Oh well, I caught a Mantine somewhere. She was cute. Blech, the Wingull. And Shrimp, the Corfish. All of the legendary Pokemon who didn't have nicknames because I put them straight in the bandbox. And of course, we can't forget those who fell in battle. Charles the Raticate. The Wall, the Aron. Mothix, the Dustox. Guildmaster, the Wigglytuff. Magnus, the Beedrill. Mlem II, the Cloyster. Ashley, the Heracross. And Jonathan, the Armaldo. And those guys in hell, but who cares about them? Boo!